Hey everyone, Scott Hansen here from NFL Red Zone. I hope you're checking out 1 hour of 5 Yard Rush, one of the best podcasts on NFL football in the UK.
Hello, Rush Nation, and welcome along here to the 5 Yard Flagship show. Special show with a special guest lined up for you tonight. We're going to have a look at FFCC, our very own Fantasy Football Competition Cup runs tomorrow. And we are joined by no other than Andy Singleton. Andy, you went ahead and won this last year, didn't you? Congratulations.
I did go ahead and win it. I am the world champ.
The first American winner as well.
What's that? I didn't hear that part. I lost you there. But if this is still going.
First American winner we had.
First American, hopefully only American ever. Yep. I had a lot of fun with this the week it was announced I won, saying, I had to come in and represent all of America and take the title away, the world champion, holding the throne up like Atlas. And I asked Murph, I said, am I getting a little too carried away with this? He said, not at all. You're not doing it enough. So keep going, brag about it all you want. You got 365 days to do it. So it's been a while. I have a few days of bragging to catch up to. But yes, I am the world champ.
So you're still living off that. I love it. And I had a look back at your roster for last year, and it's interesting. I mean, how did you feel about it at the time? Do you remember?
I feel great about every roster I draft. I mean, when you get so invested in these things, you feel like, you nail every test that you come out of, right? But it's really, we're not in control of these tests. We can only prep and try to give our best guess as to what's going to happen. But it's really up to the players. It's up to the league. It's up to the games. It's up to the performances of them.
Yeah.
So we really are out of control of it. So at the time that you're drafting, given the news of the day, everything like that, yeah, all of these feel like, as much time as we put in, I feel great. My issue has always been I wind up being in too many leagues and knowing too many players that I feel like I want diversity. So I always feel like I have a balance of players, but I never funnel all of my guys into one lineup. So that doesn't necessarily always create perfect. Yeah, exactly. So that doesn't always create perfect roster balance where, you're looking like, these are good teams. Some are really good teams. None of them are great. Had I just stuck to my guns, I would either lose every league in a year or I'd win every league in a year. You know what I mean? So it just feels like it rounds out to 500 all across the board.
I'm looking right now, my Scott Fish roster and my Warrior Bowl roster look incredibly similar. So I'm either going to have one of the greatest years ever or probably more than likely it's going to be dire on both counts.
Yeah, and there's always a balance of guys, that you just find yourself drafting more times than not. And I look back at this roster I had last year, the league winning roster, and there's definitely some commonalities that I see of guys that were my big sleepers that actually wound up being big hits. I mean, Dalton Schultz comes out as one of the biggest ones. I was going around telling everybody, make sure you draft him. Everybody was telling me I was crazy. Is Blake Jarwin. And sure enough, Dalton Schultz was pretty much undrafted in a lot of places. I had a lot of shares of him. That worked out pretty well for me. Mac Jones was another guy, and this being a 2-quarterback league, was key. So, things like that. I think we tend to fall in love with the flavor of the week, the rookies, the prospects, the guys on new teams. But the tried and true veterans always seem to be there as well. And that's something I've tried to be more cognizant of in the last couple of years. So guys like your Adam Thielens, Cooper Kupp last year is a great example. This time last year, people would have been arguing, can you make the case he's a wide receiver too, let alone the number one receiver in all fantasy? Yeah. And here we are, 12 months later, it's a totally different script. So, don't be afraid to take the guys that you think have kind of fallen out of favor, but the back of their baseball card says they're going to produce.
Well, that's it. We're kind of moving away from what is dynasty season and the rookie hype and all of that lot, and now these veteran guys and guys you mentioned like Adam Thielen and so on are suddenly just building up their value again. I was a big Thielen draft, especially in tournaments like this where he's quite touchdown dependent. It's very nice, handy to have. People like Debo last year was available sort of 8th, 9th, 10th round of drafts in redraft, and you'd have well outperformed that. So I don't think you're going to be building this roster though this year. Russell Wilson, Tom Brady. Who did you have? Jonathan Taylor, Cooper Kupp, T. Higgins, Kyle Pitts. I think you're going to struggle to pull out this one this year, right?
Absolutely. I mean, you look at like Elijah Moore was like maybe my worst wide receiver last year, and so you go back and you look at this, and I mean they're let's just count on one hand here. In a 2 QB league, you can make the argument Wilson would be a first round pick. Probably not, but you can make the argument.
He'd be early mid-second, yeah.
What's that?
He'd be early mid-second round, I'm sure. Especially now they've changed to Denver. Yeah.
Right. So you got Wilson, Jonathan Taylor, Cooper Kupp. Like there's 3 first rounders. T. Higgins, Kyle Pitts, Tom Brady. I mean, we just named 5, borderline first, second rounders on one roster. So definitely not going to be able to replicate this. But this is why we do this every year, and I think I'll have a shot. I mean, I'm the champ until I'm not the champ, right? So we're not going to know this for a little bit still.
Oh, well, you're not going to have a fight then, is what I hear there, basically.
Yes, I'm ready to go down. It's interesting because like this draft is starting soon, right? When is this draft?
Yeah, tomorrow, 2:00 our time. So what's that? About 9 a.m. I think your time.
Right. Okay. Fishbowl. I just wrapped up my draft last week. I have another dynasty draft that ended last week. Another one starts Saturday, and then another one that starts in 2 weeks, and then the draft with Giants, which is it's 300 participants. It's basically a best ball version of the Fishbowl. It's a complete ripoff of Scott's tournament. I started 8 years ago with Scott being one of the first guys in it. Just made it a best ball format. But the larger point to what I was saying was training camps haven't even begun yet. So we're doing all these drafts that have so many implications for the actual season. And some, a lot of these being best balls that we're going to be drafting guys that are going to get cut that aren't even going to be in the NFL this year. So it's, when you talk about the rookie hype and things like that, like this is really, a bit of pin the tail on the donkey. And just, what's your best guess at this stage? Because we really don't have a ton of useful information to go off of other than our gut and, what we've, reading the tea leaves. So it's an interesting time of year, and it kicks up and it ramps up really quickly in the next couple of weeks. But right now, for sure.
I mean, we just looked at the team you had and how many of them were successes and how you won't be able to do that this year. But there was guys on your roster as well. Marcus Callaway did squeeze into your final scoring, which is probably a surprise.
No, not at all. I think I might have been the high man in the world on Marcus Callaway, and that includes his family.
Nice. So there's a few on there that probably didn't play a part, right? Jaden Guyton, Kenneth Gainwell probably didn't live up to expectations. Kenyon Drake certainly didn't. James Robinson went down injured. Sam Erlinger, Xavier Jones. You've carried these guys and still come out of this victorious.
Yeah, well, I mean, wasn't this? I mean, this is I don't think I had an option to add anybody.
No waivers. No.
So right, so you got to sit here and say, Xavier Jones. I think because at the time was when we were learning about Cam Akers. I think we were drafting like the first week of training camp. So that was, my guess. I went Xavier Jones. Other people went. Who's the other guy I'm thinking of now? Other rookie. Jake Funk, yes. Other guys went Funk. I went Xavier Jones. For about 30 seconds, that felt like it was the right call. And then, the Rams made some roster moves, and then that was out. And then I think Xavier Jones got hurt himself. So, you look at things that happened in Indianapolis, and Ellinger felt like, hey, this could pan out. So like I said,
Flyers, right? Late round Flyers.
Absolutely, and that's where on the opposite end of that spectrum, that's where you pick up a guy like Dalton Schultz. That's where you pick up a guy like a Darnell Mooney at that point. Guys that are mattering to your end of season scoring in a positive way. So Mac Jones in particular, kind of a late round guy that nobody wanted to believe in Mac Jones last year, except for me and I could count the guys on one hand how many guys were in this camp. So
awesome. So let's a little look back at what it is. But for those that don't know, the Fantasy Football Challenge Cup is a 256 team, 8-round knockout style tournament. So 256 players play a best ball competition 2 weeks. So your combined score over the 2 weeks, best ball, winner progresses, loser goes out. The key that makes this different for me is that, what was it, 11? I think it's week 16 is the winner. Week 15 is the winner. You have to win 15 matchups. You cannot afford to lose one. You can get into Scott Fish Bowl playoffs and, in theory, win it with a losing record of your highest points. You can't in this. You cannot afford to lose out on any matchup on any fortnight. So it's a unique tournament in that respect. Kind of that winner progresses, loser goes home. It's also different as well, the scoring. So we mentioned it's super flex. A lot of the competitions, Warrior Bowl and Scott Fish Bowl, we've mentioned had little tweaks in their scoring, little tweaky roster setups and kickers allowed, for instance, in Scott Fish Bowl. FFCC feels, other than being super flex, quite conventional in its scoring. It is points for a pass, but other than that, it's a pretty standard, conventional redraft scoring format. Do you approach that differently to how you would say something like the Scott Fish Bowl, or expect the draft to be a bit more standard? I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, Superflex you might as well just call it 2 QB because it's 2 QB. So in that regard, it's just like the Fish Bowl. If any Superflex league you're in, if you're not treating it as 2 QB, then you've already made mistake number one. But with that being said, like there's definitely attention needs to be paid towards depth and positional depth, and quarterbacks easily dry up the fastest. So that's why you'll see had what was it, 4 quarterbacks on the roster.
You had 5 if you count earlier.
Or 5, even better, right? I had Ellinger, Mac Jones, Tom Brady,
Rudolph.
Russell.
Yeah. And so you had Russell Wilson, Tom
and
Brady,
Locke, and I had
Mac Jones, Drew Lock, and Erlinger. Yeah.
Right. So it went 5. Normally, Fish Bowl, I'll carry 4, which is 22. This, I believe, was 23-man roster, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So that was where the extra player became the quarterback. But it's really just having a balance of depth, saying, listen, okay, these are the guys I know I'm definitely starting in a perfect world. Yeah. And then who are the couple extra that could crack that lineup if all things go right? And that's kind of where the luck comes in because, as you can see, you get a couple right, and now you have depth at that position. Some weeks, like we mentioned, Dalton Schultz. Dalton Schultz was scoring in the Superflex multiple weeks as a flex option at tight end. That's with Kyle Pitts in the lineup. So what it might have seemed like, hey, don't overdraft tight ends because I'm really only going to count on one of them. Well, it's case in point that you might look for others. So, I mean, I don't want to sound like, there's a secret sauce or formula because literally the only separator between me and, most of these rosters and these lineups and these participants in this draft was actual luck and, things just going right each and every week. And whether that was 10% or 100%, it happened and it matters. And that was, the differentiator. So I'll celebrate, I'll pound my chest, but I at the end of the day will acknowledge as well that there was a little help that went into this also.
Isn't a lot of fantasy football luck at the end of the day though, right?
I mean, it depends on who you ask. If you ask me, I tell you it's a 90% luck. If you ask others, they'll say it has nothing to do with luck. So I mean, it really depends on your audience, but I think deep down, everybody would have to admit, there's an element of that involved.
And I would say even more so when it comes to a best ball competition, because those late round flyers can go off in 1 week. Somebody can turn an ankle early in a game and your wide receiver 6 that you've drafted is suddenly in the game for a full game and can get, 9 catches for 80 yards and 2 touchdowns in theory. He's now scoring on your points this week.
Yeah, and listen, I'm a big baseball guy as well. I think I've talked with Murph about this in the past. That fantasy baseball, I think, is a truer test to who's good and who's bad. And it's still challenging. Don't get me wrong, but as you just mentioned, you could have a backup, fifth wide receiver who only got in the game because two guys got injured, and it's only having those 9 catches because the team was down 30 and they were playing catch up the whole time. Whereas in baseball, your team could be losing, like the Red Sox lost the other day,
Don't mention that.
25-3 or
Don't,
something like that.
don't mention
But the
that.
guys on the Red Sox are still getting up in the 8th inning and treating that at bat as their own
Yeah.
individual at bat. Has nothing. They know I'm not hitting a 22-run homer, but
Yeah.
they could still get a hit and help you. So, in that regard, game script and game outcome really affect fantasy football in a whole nother dimension and level. So.
And that's why you drafted Elijah Moore last year, I guess, expecting him to be down 30 every week and catching the ball.
I'm a Jet fan.
Okay, cool. Time that perfect then.
That helps. That helped a lot. I also just will always go back to the draft night video of AJ Brown tearing up, telling him, "You knew you were the best of us," and that included AJ Brown and DK Metcalf.
Right.
So seeing what they've done, I know different body types for the three of them, but seeing him say that, and then knowing that he was going to have an opportunity in New York, it just like, all right, the price was worth it,
Yeah.
and hopefully this year it works out the way we hoped it could have last year.
So, Andy, when you get to this stage now, the day or the night before a draft, have you done much prep or looking into it, or do you go off the fly, or do you have your tiers and your rankings? How do you set out for a draft like this?
Yeah, it's really, the prep is year round. It's every day. We're at this stage pretty much. I think what social media and Twitter has helped us do is kind of all find our our rabbit holes, and we all happen to be in this one. All these tournaments like this, like mine, all emerged because of social media. Because look at, I'm talking across the pond with you right now on a live call, where this doesn't happen, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. We wouldn't even know each other existed, yet alone now we're in a fantasy league together. So we've kind of all, found, hey, I'm not alone in this. And I think that's kind of opened up things for people to actually really embrace this lifestyle even more. So it's year round. It's 365. There's not something that happens in, March that relates to an NFL player that most of us have not heard or are aware of. So you're drafting your rankings, your personal biases or thoughts on sleepers or busts. I think that's just kind of internal at this point with most of us. Of course, we write it down, especially if you're producing content. You have to put it in black and white, to put it out there. But for the most part, I think you could interview or poll anybody and they could run off a whole list of guys they like or dislike for this week or this year or next season or whatever the case may be.
Well, that's it. I think a lot of us, me and Murph, have talked on shows about how to compile rankings and build your tiers and so on. And everybody will have content creators that they favor and prefer. And you can find consensus rankings out there if you want to that can almost do the job for you from an amalgamation of people. So, but it's worth heading into them. In terms of, like, I guess you have like a standard home league with family, friends, and that over there.
Yeah, I have. I've actually dropped it down to just, I think now I gotta go back and do inventory because I technically have a couple home leagues that have come out from just being involved in this industry for the last 10 years and just other content creators and friends local and abroad and that you're in some of these leagues that have now become home leagues, although they didn't start out in the traditional sense of local one night draft at a bar kind of thing. In that regard, I do have my Firehouse League. Many people that follow me know I'm a firefighter for the last 20 plus years, and started a league in my firehouse 19 years ago, and that's still going. So I've had a couple others that were kind of been in and out of over the years, depending on time available. Last year, I got into, I guess, what could be considered a home league with a bunch of guys on Long Island. This was organized by Sal Lito. So I went out and we drafted at bar that night. So I guess that would count as a home league. But I would say there's always that one fallback, yes, and wildly different.
And do you prepare for those different to how you would something like this?
There honestly is no way for me to prepare for
You
that
drink
league
less,
at this
probably.
point. There's no way for me to prepare for that league at this point
Right.
because there are guys that are still bringing out magazines that most of the world would laugh at. Well, most of this world would laugh at now and say, who's buying those things? There's half the league, is still drafting guys that retired 6 seasons ago and just throwing that name out there, and have no clue. So they're just in it for the camaraderie. So there's really no way to prepare for it because you go in there and you either significantly overplay your hand or underplay it. I think I went Kyle Pitts first round last year for this fact of knowing that I could have either gotten him in the 10th round or he could have went first overall, just because that's how wild the outcomes could be. So I just said, screw it. I'll take him because I know I can recover from this in 2, 3, 4, and 5. And
awesome.
Yeah, so
we have Merch popped on. There you go. Look, world champions in the house.
Hello, Adam. I wore my All-American hat for you since I am the American champ.
I'm guessing that relates to Kyle Pitts being free money drafting him in.
Yes.
But that's good. Yeah,
I would actually call Dalton Schultz free money at this point, but sure.
He's got to be drafted early this year, though, right?
It's got to be earlier than last year.
There's no Jarwin in town. There's no Amari Cooper in town. Michael Gallup's going to miss time and he's coming off a career best year. So Dalton Schultz's value is going up. There's no way about that. So, fine. So what are your tips coming into this draft? What have you looked to do? How have you prepared? Have you got any tips for the guys that are listening? If anyone out there listening's got a question, please send it in and we'll ask away. But what have you done to prepare?
Send in the questions because I much prefer having a specific direction to go than a general one, and that was not a shot at all. It's just anything going into this year. I always say
you mentioned it's 2 QBs. So where are you drafting at? You drafting what? Do you know what position you're drafting at?
In this one, I am drafting. Let me look this up. I forgot. I think I'm 7th.
Okay.
I think I'm drafting 7th. So, and we start tomorrow. You want me?
QB league. So you're expecting a QB at 7, perhaps, or is your mind elsewhere? So
I'm picking 7th in a draft that starts tomorrow, and this is public. And you want me to tell you who I'm targeting? It will be it will most likely be in the quarterback family.
Cool.
Just being that I think you kind of have to go. I remember this has to be 4 years ago now.
Yep.
Because I didn't win. I finished 4th overall in the Fishbowl. I think it was SFB 10.
Yeah.
And so 3 years ago now. And could have went one scoring, one player change away from winning it all. But whatever. It's the reason I bring that up is because I would get mocked by Jake Seeley, who I love, but all in kid on Twitter, and for taking 3 quarterbacks in the first 4 rounds, and that was like my strategy in Fishbowl for like 3 straight years. And he kept saying, "Oh, it's too much, it's too much, it's too much." And then I would, tell him, "Well, who has the higher finishes? Who has the higher finishes?" So it works in depending on the format. With that being said, don't get caught into a trap where you're targeting position over player because then you're going to be passive value to reach for something just to fill a void. The other thing I was starting to say was I've always been into prospects, whether it be baseball, football, scouting the rookies in the draft. Don't fall in love with them. They're easy to fall in love with, but and the game of football has changed dramatically. Whereas 5 years ago, probably a little longer now, but the 30-year wide receiver breakout was the industry norm and standard, and now guys are getting drafted to perform in year 1, and by and large, most of them are returning value on that production. You look at Jefferson last year, and even Justin Jefferson as an example. People were talking about those are reach. There's too many mouths to feed on that offense. Oh my God, he's dropped 5 passes a game in the preseason. He's going to be a bust.
Yep.
And now look, he's arguably the greatest dynasty asset in the history of fantasy football at this point.
Right alongside Jamar Chase, who couldn't catch a ball either in the NFL.
I'm sorry, that's what I meant. I meant Jamar Chase last year, not Justin Jefferson. LSU boys, but anyway, you could look at Chase and then you could look at Elijah Moore. It could have easily been the opposite. Elijah Moore could have had 1,000-yard season, and Jamar Chase could have been hurt or dropping passes. So don't over invest, but don't rule them out either, I guess is
awesome.
The
so we had a question from Gary. Gary has said, much like we've been talking about here, but QB runs have started really early in some leagues. Is him? Do we think this will happen in FFCC? We've touched upon that a little bit, but
110%. Absolutely.
So to counter that slightly, you didn't want to give away your tactics from spot 7, but Murph's thrown one out there to see if you're interested in Kelsey at 7.
I mean, the interesting thing about this scoring is that there's a significant premium on tight ends, which makes them more important than not. But if the problem with that for me is, again, the ball's not in their control, right? The quarterback has the ball, so he can dictate his success more than a tight end can. We've seen the variations in performance of like a George Kittle, for instance, where, we talk about he's the greatest tight end in the world as far as blocking and what he means to your real world team. But in fantasy, he can be hit or miss because he can have spells depending on the quarterback and, other players getting involved. So to me, it's a lot of capital to put into drafting that position, especially when you consider there's 3 to 5 that you feel confident in, and then 6 to 50 that could finish the year as that next guy up. So the quarterback to me is a lot safer for that reason, and there's definitely gonna be a run. I know you had mentioned something in there about the 3rd round reversal, and that definitely adds
brand new this year.
Element. Well, I forgot. There was a league I was in last year that it took me by surprise. It might have been the Fishbowl. Fishbowl had that last year, I think.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, first time last year,
yeah. And this year it's out, right?
No, 3rd round reversal this year again in Fishbowl.
Was it? All right. I didn't remember it. I don't know. I've basically just been going, when am I on the clock? All right, who's on? And
that's when you're in too many leagues, right?
Yeah, exactly. So this means is there a 3rd round reversal in this? I thought there was.
There is.
Wait, there is. Okay, there is. So I got.
So 6 to 10 is kind of not a bad spot to be to try and minimize that, right?
I would say so. So I could tell you there's definitely going to be, the question was, will there be a QB run early? There definitely will be a QB run early. There will be a couple tight ends sprinkled in there. Kelsey at 7, I would probably say Kelsey won't be there at 7. If I were going to make a bet right now with you, Murph, I would say Kelsey's not there at 7.
Because I'm at 6, not in your draft, but
yeah, I think somebody's going to veer for him at 5 or 6. I think somebody's going to have their their top end quarterbacks, and then figure, you know what, I'll come back and grab my next tier because those guys are gone. Let me grab tight end here.
Fair. I think he'd one of probably, as you say, only 2 or 3 that you probably want to grab anyway, especially at that certain capital space. So Gary again asked, do we think that the players going on the pup list will impact the drafting for this competition?
Do you have one in a player specifically in mind? Because I'll tell you
we've seen running backs recently. J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards have both gone on. You go to the Jaguars and they're saying that none of their backs are going on, James Robinson or Travis Etienne. Do you think you'll see those kind of...
Right, and like a case in point, a player I was trying to find as much as I could was, towards the end of the Fishbowl was James White, who's on the pup list, and Some reports say he was walking with a limp a week ago. Other people are responding to that report saying you're the only one reporting that. So, everybody else said he was fine. So, things like that where, yeah, that's going to play a tremendous role because, you could get a guy like James White in the 20th round that could look like he should have been picked within the top 10 if he's back to James White of old.
People still drafting James White. An over 30-year-old part used back with a hip injury.
I mean, well, that's what I'm saying. This could be, if it's all systems go, this is a guy that's going to, catch upwards of 50 balls and have an impact and be rosterable and startable in leagues and win you some matchups because of that. And you're going to get them for free. So, these are some of the deeper guys, we're talking about. J.K. Dobbins is not going to be affected by his pup status. He's going to be drafted. It's just going to be a matter of, are you going to get him in, say, the 5th round as opposed to the 8th round, depending on how your league goes. And maybe 5th is a little too ambitious, but you get my point. It's not going to be, a guy you're throwing a dart at the end.
This is one of the only leagues, I think, late rounds where you might see someone like Carl Juszczyk get picked up. Because that guy's good for a touchdown somewhere. And if he helps you out on a week you're short on buys or someone's come down and he comes up with a score that week, that does you great.
Correct.
He's not going to be drafted in any other 22-round leagues, I'm sure.
Yeah, and as far as like the Jaguars issue, does that affect anything? I mean, I saw somebody tweeted out earlier today. I guess Snoop Connor season's over before it started, and I missed the enrollment because I didn't know there was a Snoop Connor season. But ETN is going to be.
You was on Xavier Jones last year, so careful.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Travis Etienne is going to be a monster this year. I firmly believe that. I don't like the type of injury he had. So is there a chance for it returns or limits him? Yes. But I think this entire offense is going to be night and day from what it was, a year ago. It was just it was disrespectful to the NFL what happened in Jacksonville last year, all because of what happened from the top down. But James Robinson, I think, is going to have value as well. I think you're going to see something similar to like what we see with like Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard in Dallas right now between Robinson and ETN, in the sense that you're going to have valuable production from both of them. I know people are going to hear Ezekiel Elliott and think that's another one of these guys that I feel like it's like, don't overthink it. Don't overthink it. He's still going to be good for 200 plus carries. He's still going to get you and flirt with 1,000 yards.
And he stays healthy
on the ground. Like, right. So don't overthink it. Don't get bored and look for the flavor of the month. Don't draft Tony Pollard before you draft Ezekiel Elliott. Is the message. You might say, okay, well, one's, RB, 12 and the other's RB 13, fine, but make sure it's Elliott ahead of Pollard.
Well, they're paying one of them and not more than the other, and that says a lot. So follow the money,
right? So to long story short, the players on PUP will impact drafting. Not at this stage.
Okay.
Again, this is pre-training camp.
Is a strategy of yours as well to handcuff running backs, or are you one of those that handcuff somebody else's running backs? Because last year you had Jacobs and Drake. Was that intentional, or was that just where the value fell?
Well, the argument between that, and it really kind of took me to like a year or two ago to kind of respect and understand this, was if I draft my own handcuff and my lead guy goes down, I'm still covered, right? If I draft your handcuff, I'm rolling the dice here because your guy might stay healthy and my handcuff never materializes and my stud might get hurt. So now I got 0. Flip side of that, my stud is healthy and your guy goes down and now my handcuff to you. So I have 2 studs now. Yeah. Right. So at that point, I think it's value. I'll tell you one guy, fishbowl related, I reached for was Chuba Hubbard because I drafted McCaffrey in round 2 or 3, which I just felt was too much value at that point. So given McCaffrey's recent history, I figured, you know what, I have to handcuff him. I don't expect anything out of Chuba unless he gets elevated into the role. So that was a kind of a situation where I felt like I had to protect that with my own handcuff. Yeah. But if you're looking at somebody like a Dalvin Cook, I'm not necessarily feeling the need to handcuff him at this point. 2 years ago, he probably would have made the McCaffrey argument I just did. Right now, I think I'd be a little less hesitant. I think the ideal situation is what we just talked about with like an Elliott and a Pollard, or an ETN and a Robinson, where you're going to get value out of both of them. You could start them both in some weeks, and then you also have the backup, so you get value and protection all rolled into one.
So
So
I'm a guy
I
that will
really think
draft others' handcuffs, and I've always took that gamble that way. And yeah, if you lose your guy and his guy's healthy, you are left with nothing. But there'll be other backs that go down in the year whose handcuff is available on waivers. There'll be somebody that you can pick up. It was James Robinson the other year. It was Jonathan Foreman for a period of time last year. You can get these guys out there. So I'll always take a shot on somebody else's and take the upside gamble, and then use the waivers, if not in this league, obviously, but use the waivers to try and fill a slot in if early on in the season when one of those go down anyway. And I've always approached it that way personally.
Yeah, no, and it's a fine enough strategy, and it's got its merits. To me, like I said, I don't like to hold the line too tight to sticking to one particular strategy, week in and week out, or draft in and draft out, but rather have some flexibility. I guess you could say it's more of a tier based, drafting method, where I have my ideas for things I want to do in this range, but there's not one more important than the other or one better than the other. And again, this goes back to what we started at the beginning, where that's where the deviation comes in the variance, where, all right, I have this guy in 3 other teams. I don't have any other guy. I'll take the other guy here just to be able to have
you don't lose out everywhere. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So that kind of thing.
And it's also where something else we spoke about comes in, is that large element of luck.
Well, again,
we come back to it.
It's all luck. I shouldn't say all.
Well, we've
luck,
got you on here for your expert opinion, so don't put it all down to luck, Andy.
I mean, listen, it's not all luck, because if you had James White, and I'm only saying him because we just mentioned him, if you drafted him as your RB1, that's asking for too much luck. But I say luck because if you drafted him as your 5th running back, 6th running back, just as a flyer, and he hits, and now you win a league because that was the difference maker, that's luck. And somebody's going to win a league because of a situation like that. So that's what I mean.
Format, you only need to win a game. You only need to win a week. You only have to be relevant for one game, and it can help you out progress to the next round before the other guys are back in. So
it goes back to the adage of you can't win a draft in the first round, but you can lose it in the first round. So you're kind of looking at your studs to give you that base amount of points, just to be in the competition, and then the others, the fillers, the gambles you take, where you do your homework, where you do your research, where you watch and listen to guys like yourself and myself. That's what's gonna separate you from winning or losing a league. Awesome. But you need that base production.
That's it. A couple of other questions coming. Johnny here says, will the players eliminated teams become available to pick up? Johnny, they're not. It is, once it's drafted, you're set. There's no waivers, there's no pickups, there's no drops. It will just run as it is. Murph has sent you compliments on the handheld microphone, sir.
Well,
going old school.
No, the stand is broken twice now, so
so it's handheld by default.
I don't get enough invites anymore to have a need to really repair this or fix it. So for the occasional ones of these I do now, I don't mind holding it.
Someone else is coming with, do you see Carl Rudolph as a late tight end flyer in Tampa? I'm a Tampa fan, and Merv's answered in the comments here says Tampa aren't even looking at it as a late round flyer, and I have to agree with that. I don't see him having much purpose there, fantasy relevancy. Without Break going down, I still think, even with him in, there's an element that Gronk will probably play at some point this year. I'm hoping, I guess. But I think we just in Tampa have a very young tight end room behind Cameron Brate. And bringing in someone like Carl Rudolph with his experience and his wise head to help coach and oversee and mentor those guys is the reason he's there. I don't think he's going to see a big production this year. Would you look at someone like Carl Rudolph late on? I think my internet's gone. Are you there, Andy? Andy, have we lost you? Guys, I'm not sure if it's me that's gone or Andy that's gone. Let's try and bring him back in. He is rebooting. He's had trouble. So yeah, anyway, back to Kyle Rudolph. I don't see him being fantasy relevant at all this year. I don't even see him being play relevant in Tampa. I still hold on other hope. What else have we got on here while we're looking at the questions? Murph, as I said, he's frozen. We got that one. He's coming back in, guys. He has just messaged me. I think we lost him and he's gone. I blame Murph and the mic. That sounds about right. Murph even reckons he goes far saying he can see Rudolph getting cut. Personally, I disagree with Murph. I think we'll keep him around as an experienced head, as I say, in the training room, in the meeting rooms and that we have. But I can't see him having any real value at all. Let's see what else we've got. Devin Duvernay is going to be a thing this year. Can you confirm or deny? Not for me, if I'm honest. Wide receiver 3 on his roster could break out. Someone's going to catch the ball there after they've let Hollywood go. I just don't know if there's enough targets around there. Bateman will be the wide receiver 1. I expect Mark Andrews to pick up a lot of the work. Andy, hopefully, is back with us. Andy, are you there?
I am here. Can you still hear me? I don't know what just happened.
Somebody blamed Murph and the mic conversation for cutting it out. You pulled a wire and the whole thing went down.
Yeah, I don't know what happened here. But you were asking about Kyle Rudolph when I signed off, and I actually wanted to comment on
Yes, go on. Go on,
did we go too far already? I took him
no,
at the
you're
end
fine.
of,
Go back there.
I took him at the end of the Fishbowl.
Okay.
Just because, every year something has broke. Can you hear me now?
Yep, gotcha.
All right, perfect. I just put the headphones back in. Every year I've been fortunate to have some news break during Fishbowl drafts. A couple years ago, it was the Melvin Gordon news with the Chargers that opened the door for Austin Eckler. And I wound up getting him in like the 8th round or something just because I happened to be like one pick away. And I guess the guy ahead of me didn't hear the news. So this year happened to be, the Kyle Rudolph news. And listen, it's not to say I need Kyle Rudolph on every roster or I love Kyle Rudolph or I think he's the answer. What I can tell you, though, is Brady is, had a history of utilizing 2 tight ends. OJ Howard just never took that step as the guy we wanted to believe he could be. Cameron Brate kind of, defaulted his way into that role. Gronk, and I mean, listen, like I said, you could make the argument that both of them are going to have some value. You could also make the argument that Rudolph is just that veteran that has that rapport with Brady, and hey, it just becomes what it is. So as a late round flyer, I do think he's going to have some value. And this is a guy that could finish the season, as a top 10 tight end just for his landing spot.
Because anybody could finish the season as a top 10 tight end outside of the 5 or 6 that are already in it. The rest of them are take your pick, right?
Right. That is what right. Just that fact alone, and then you add in the quarterback, you add in the system, that kind of thing, and it's like you just keep adding, checks to why this is worth a pick.
Awesome. So the question I was just touching on, and you can pick up now, then was, you've heard a rumor on Twitter that Devin Duvernay is going to be a thing this year. Can you confirm or deny? What are we expecting from Devin?
Well, he's referring to my thread.
Yes, I saw it.
Yeah, after I posted, I found out threads are no longer a trendy thing on Twitter. So apologies.
It went out yesterday, apparently. So
yeah,
get with the times.
Apparently, I don't know. We'll see what happens. But Devin Duvernay was going to be, my big time sleeper. What do you mean it went out yesterday? What did I miss? Did I miss something?
Threads went out of fashion yesterday.
Oh, threads went out. Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
I just scared
Sorry, Devin Duvernay's cut. Yeah, what you?
Maybe you got hurt or something. I missed it. You just scared the crap out of me. No, threads have gone out of style. But no, Duvernay is somebody that I happen to. There's 3 players the Ravens have all in the same boat, right? You got Devin Duvernay, James Prochet, and Tylan Wallace.
Yeah.
Of the 3, they were all kind of in that same category, same realm, same boat, same similar skill sets, similar conferences, similar production in college, all Senior Bowl participants, all guys I scouted heavily. Of the three, Tylan Wallace was my least favorite. I thought, he was the guy that just never looked like he was going to make it happen, and then just somehow was getting behind defenses and making it happen. So that was a trend I just didn't think would continue. James Prochet was probably my favorite of the three coming out. I just loved his mentality. I loved his makeup. Got a chance to talk to him, and a few times at the Senior Bowl, which was the last one I was at a couple of years ago. Former baseball player. Just loved his attitude and thought he was a surprise. I asked him, people were saying he might be the next AB. Is that your guy? And he said, no, Jarvis Landry is my guy. That's, that guy has the dog in him. Like, that's who he wanted to be. So, but of the three, Duvernay has the best skill set and fits the best mold of who can be Marquise Brown's replacement. Okay. And when you look at all the news that's come out, and you can get all this in the thread, but Duvernay has the highest likelihood of success from this trio, in my opinion, and you can get him for little to nothing, if nothing at all, at this stage. So why not? He's the biggest sleeper to me that nobody's talking about.
I've got another question here then. Considering the depth, is Watson as a banker, which I'm going to guess is Christian Watson at Green Bay perhaps here?
Yeah.
Wide receiver depth?
I'm going to guess the same thing.
You'd like to shy away from young guys in that position sometimes. Is that the case here?
I think the case here is that Green Bay has needed a wide receiver for what seems like 20 years, and they've never shown an ability to do much of anything with the position. Now you go and you take a guy, you actually put some draft capital into him with the second round, but from a smaller school. And listen, nothing against North Dakota State. We've seen these programs turn out a lot of great players that have gone on to NFL success. From these these conferences and whatnot. But he's an older prospect already, which is going to piss some people off. He just turned 23 in May. He's one of these guys that is going to sound like, I think he sounds better in theory because of his draft capital and his size than what we should actually expect from him. And again, go back, like Alan Lazard was probably my least favorite of the recent Packer wide receivers, and he's been the most successful. So that should tell you something when you look at Marquez Valdez-Scantling, you look at Romeo Dubes. You look at some of the guys they've brought in, they've drafted recently. I'm not. I don't want to take that gamble. Not for what it's going to cost you. If you're talking about you can get them for cheap, for free, yeah, okay. In that regard, why not? But if you have to put any type of capital into that, I would not.
Fine. I'm guessing Watson's going to start us up, and that is a potential hit there. So, Merv's got one more request for you, Andy, before we're done. You can see the championship trophy behind you.
Oh yeah.
Is it there? There it is.
I should have actually had this out the whole time. I could have put the mic on here, held it as a mic stand. But yes, this is the trophy right here. So
look at that.
As you can
Pride
see,
of place.
World champion, not league champion, world champion. And this actually,
awesome.
This trophy actually is a world event. So
it is a world event. We had Jack Humphrey won the first one here in the UK. Vegard won the second one, who I think is Danish from memory. Great guy. And then obviously you've took the trophy back to America last year.
I did. I have. So
and, you're keeping it. Pride of place in the window.
I'm keeping this one. I think Murph would probably prefer, if I did win it again, So we wouldn't have to buy a whole nother trophy, and we could just add 2022 here.
Little plaque on the side. Yeah.
Right. So I think that would be the best scenario for everybody involved. So just let me win it again, guys. That'd be the easiest route to go.
It's drawn and it is seeded. And if I get through the first round, I've got to play Jack Humphrey, who was the inaugural winner potentially in the second round, and Vegard, the second winner potentially in the third round. So my odds of getting past round 3 are incredibly slim at this stage. So, and you're up against, I had a quick look, you've got 5 yards, very own Rob, guy who works here, helps us out.
Sorry.
So it'd be interesting.
Sorry in advance.
Andy, just before we are done, any final tips or things you can give people heading into tomorrow's draft?
I think it's always going to go back to just have fun. Just enjoy it, enjoy the ride. Don't take things too serious. I don't know. Ever since 2020, life has just been kind of weird, ups and downs. I see so much bickering that goes on, and it just seems so unnecessary. And then so many people that just, myself included, that just seem to get, taken the wrong way. And those that know me, like Murph, will swear by me. So it's just a weird place. And don't go too far off the rails. Just enjoy it. Just have fun. It's fantasy. It's literally in the name of the game, fantasy.
Yeah.
So enjoy this as an escape and an outlet. Don't make it a job. Don't make it more stressful than the rest of your normal life.
That's it. And that's why I love Scott Fish. We had a chance to draft locally, and I drafted in an imaginary place purely on the basis to try and meet some more people and get talking to them. And we meet some fantastic guys. Vegard, he won from Norway, apparently not Denmark, so my apologies. And Andy, you mentioned it at the top of the show, but before we're done, tell people a bit more about your DWGA. I've signed up for it today, hopefully, if all being well. I'd love to take part. So tell everyone else where they can find that and get involved.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a link on my Twitter account at People's Pen, People's with the Z. The link is there. Basically, Scott and I hit it off years ago when I first got into this industry, about 10 years ago now. Scott and I used to talk all the time when he had only maybe 10,000 followers at the time, and he had more time. Now he's, ridiculous amounts, and he's hobnobbing with, the Matthew Berrys and CBS, crews of the world. So neither of us actually have enough time for each other as we used to, but we're still friends, of course. And 8 years ago, I said, hey, I love Fishbowl. I want to do something, to kind of launch my YouTube channel, which was Nickel Press TV at the time. I want to do something similar. Would you be interested in, being a part of it? I want to get some big names. So it was Scott, Josh Moore from 4 for 4, Evan Silva, Mike Tagliere, Matt Harmon. I'm trying to think. I think we had 2 leagues. We had 24 teams, and it was like 12 big time guys and then like 12, amateurs, if you will. And I put in some wonky scoring for like receivers, like return yardage was included, like 1 point for every 5 carries, points for like first downs, things like that. And people liked it so much that I doubled it year 2. So we went to 48, and then we doubled it again and we went to like 96. And then somehow it got up to 300 now. And it's been at 300 for, I think, the last 3 or 4 years. It's a best ball format. So set it and forget it. Just draft and hold. 22 rounds, no kickers, no defense, just all offense. Return yardage is a huge thing because you'll have guys that, you'll look at the scoring and like wide receiver 1 will be a guy that's not even wide receiver 5 on his team. How is this guy getting so much value? Because he's the best kick returner. Like Devin Duvernay, for instance, who was an all-pro returner last
3 years ago in Chicago.
Yeah. So he would be a nice guy to have. So it started from that. And then the last thing I'll say is I played college basketball. So March Madness has always been, my thing. And we have a March Madness style playoff tournament where it's 64 teams. So we separate the 300 teams into 4 regions, and then, top 16 from each region, 64. And then it's one and done from weeks like 12 through 17 to just one eventual league champion. So free to get into it. Anybody wants
Sign-ups
to make
on
any
your Twitter?
donations, sign-ups on the Twitter. I think we're up to right now. There are 218 signed up, so there's still
Okay.
room
Few
for
spots.
82. So if anybody wants to jump in, more the merrier. There is a vig though on if you're from the UK and you sign up, you have to pay me £2 per entry. I'm only kidding. There's nothing. It's all free. So you can go to my Twitter and find the sign up there.
Awesome. I've just changed the screen around so your Twitter handle's there visible for everybody. So do check it out. I've signed up. It seems good fun. Guys, thanks for listening. I'm going to remind you, top right hand corner there is the 5 Yard Rush Fantasy Playbook. It's available on Amazon. And Murph's got an exclusive competition running for anybody that buys it. So buy it. Show them that you've got it. I think there's John A. Johnson shirts in there. I think there's a CJ Mosley signed jersey in there, all for the winners of these leagues. So get involved in that. And other than that, I guess it's just best of luck with your drafts tomorrow. Enjoy them, as Andy says.
Yeah. Can I just add one more thing before we
Please do
hang
so.
up? Because I mentioned it before, but Adam Murph has become an amazing friend in this space. And I'm just tremendously proud of everything you guys are doing at 5 Yard Rush, from what it started to now having a magazine to having several different elements of the show, different shows. As this is the flagship show, you have different dimensions of what you guys are offering content-wise. Awesome following and doing a great thing that's internationally regarded now. And I just kudos to you guys for keeping it going, and of course to the OG Murph on getting it all going.
Well, that's it. 5 Yard has college, IDP, Dynasty, this redraft show. It'll have a DFS show during the season as well. So lots of writers pumping out amazing content on the website, as well as obviously the audios that we have going on. So, Andy, thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it. Love the insight into it. Congratulations one final time, I guess, on your victory last year. And congratulations for the first time on this year's victory.
Thank you. Yes, going back to back. Awesome. I'm starting a dynasty here.
There you go. Best of luck, Andy. Thank you, sir. All the best. Bye now.